This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this StockBox interview.
Province, South Africa, from Sibanye-Stillwater. Well, thank you very much for your time, Jason. How are you?
I'm very good this morning, Mark. Very, very good.
Good. Well, let's just start by this acquisition then. What does it mean, really, for Neo Energy's positioning for, of course, the uranium and the gold markets?
Look, this is, I guess, the final piece in this kind of initial strategy to consolidate our position in South Africa's primary production centre for uranium. We've been able to tie up three key projects, the Basa North and Basa South projects, which we announced we'd completed all documentation for in September, and where we acquired 90 million pounds of uranium and 4.2 million ounces of gold. However, the bit in between, the Basa Uranium Gold Mine, was the key thing to that strategy, because that's a former mine placed on care and maintenance just last year. It has the shaft, processing equipment, it has the mining right and everything. So it also adds another 1.2 million ounces of gold and another 27 million pounds of uranium resources in a higher classification of certainty. So it expands our resources in that area, but it gives us the infrastructure not only to get back in speedily and recommence gold and uranium mining at the Basa uranium mine, but allows us to use that infrastructure to also access Basa North and Basa South in due course.
So it locks up the entire area effectively?
It locks it up for us, but it unlocks the value. You know, this is infrastructure which, companies just aren't building now. You've got a shaft complex there, the Beatrix 4 shaft, which is 2.5 kilometers deep, which was built in the 1980s. The processing plants, you've got 4 mills, you've got a massive processing plant there. And I visited this a number of months ago, clearly. All that mine infrastructure, which conservatively has been valued at about 2 billion rand, so a bit shy of 100 million pounds, we're getting able to refurbish, upgrade, and use to very quickly advance not just the Basa Uranium Gold Mine back into production, but then unlock the value to the north and to the south in those projects.
Okay. And Sibanye then, just tell us a little bit about who Sibanye are and also why they are happy to kind of sell this project area to yourself.
Yeah, look, Sibanye is listed on the New York and it's listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It's got a market capitalization of close to $3 billion. So they're one of the world's largest producers of platinum, of palladium, of those PGM metals. They're a top tier world-class gold producer. They're also producing, refining a number of other, call it critical metals, the cobalts of this world and so on. So they are a big player. They are producing uranium. They're retreating a tailings dam actually in South Africa, and they've got other uranium assets. But they've got a very dynamic CEO and management team. And with that, they have been looking at a way of maximizing the value in their uranium assets. And that's primarily here at the Basa Uranium Gold Mine.
Okay, so they hand it over to you effectively to run and manage it and exploit it, and they still retain the upside there, but it's not their direct project effectively.
Exactly. They also get to benefit from the broader, I guess, portfolio of uranium assets that we've got. Obviously, the Basa North and Basa South, which gives us, well over 100 million pounds of uranium resources there, and 5 million ounces of gold. So it increases their exposure in that area. But also with our Henkrys project, let's not forget that, because that's something which, again, will be pushing very fast towards a development decision and towards a production scenario in the coming 2025.
Sure. Okay. Now, I know that some of the Sibanye, you'll have a representative on the board, won't you? So what role will Sibanye play as a pretty significant shareholder now in Neo and, of course, board member?
Yeah, look, when we complete the settlement of this transaction, which is still subject to a number of regulatory approvals, both in South Africa, in terms of how the mining right is transferred through to us, in terms of some of the other regulatory approvals, but also in the UK, where we need to get a takeover waiver 9 approval, because they will, in all likelihood, go above 29.9%, and shareholder approval. And that's not going to happen until the second half of next year. So look, they will have 2 board appointees to start with, coming on the board as non-executive directors. They also have a right of refusal to participate in any future equity raisings that we may want to do. So they want to preserve what they consider a strategic shareholding in us. They don't want to be diluted down. They are there as a big brother, if you want to call it that, a very, very big brother, but clearly have the experience in deep underground mining in South Africa. But they have the financial resources as well to support us. So this opens up a whole new avenue of funding towards us. They clearly don't want to dilute down, and they may well in the near future want to increase their holdings in the company too.
Okay. So just looking at Basa then, just from the RNS, just reading that this morning here. So the current resources, it's a mix of measured and indicated, but it's 26.9 million tonnes of uranium, 1.2 million tonnes of gold, an in-situ value presently at 5 billion, and a 20-year life of mine, a targeted annual production of 1 to 3 million pounds of uranium and 100,000 ounces of gold. Is that about right? That's just for Basa.
Yeah, that's just this Basa, call it Basa Central or the Basa Uranium Gold Mine there. You refer to the resources in tons. It's almost 27 million pounds of uranium and 1.2 million ounces of gold, the majority of which are or a fair portion of which is in that measured category. There's been multiple previous pre-feasibility studies, development studies done in terms of recommencing operations there, developing into that Basa Reef. We've seen those studies. We're actually currently updating those studies. So the assets, as well as the shaft system and all the underground development that's there already, the processing plant, again, the power, the water. This is a major mining operation already located in the heart of South Africa's uranium producing region. So it's a great asset to have, and one which, like you say, you've got some significant value, in situ value you can put to the gold and uranium resources. But that infrastructure as well, it's not just the value of it, which has been heavily discounted down to about 2 billion rand, 100 million pounds. It's the time that would take to develop. That's 2 years of development, in itself. So that's already there. So this is a true brownfield reopening of a significant mining operation, which, we're excited to have the opportunity to do.
Good. And that 100 million you referred to earlier, 100 million pounds of uranium and 5 million of gold, that's for the total whole Basa North, South and Central.
Yeah, when you consolidate that kind of region, they call it the Basa Reef region, across those 3 projects, you've now tied that up over 25 kilometers from north to south, okay, with the plant and all that associated mine infrastructure in the heart of it. You've got in total, it's 117 million pounds of uranium resources, and 5.4 million ounces of gold. So some significant value there. But importantly, these are resources you can develop from existing infrastructure. You've already got, Mark, 300,000 ounces where development has been done up to. So you've just got to get back in. You've obviously got to refurbish, go through the plant, go through the shaft. The last time the winding gear on that shaft was operated was in December, about 12 months ago. Okay. The processing plant, it's a gold plant, so you've got to upgrade that, but you've also got to install a new uranium plant. So there's time to get there, but you've got that infrastructure that will allow you far quicker than I think any other developing uranium company to get into production. And that's not, pipe dreams here. The infrastructure is there. I mean, you'll see on our social media platforms today, you'll see photographs of the plant, of the headgear, of everything that's there. It's a massive operation, and just represents the sort of gold and uranium mining operations that South Africa was building back in the early 80s. And remember, this started production here, both for gold and uranium, back in early 1980s, and was only put on care and maintenance in 2023. So this is a significant asset without any question.
Okay. So how do we get there then, Jason? How do you get to that annual production target there? What have you got to do to actually achieve this?
Look, everybody's been talking to us and asking us about where's your funding? Where's your funding? We haven't closed the funding yet because we've only just closed this transaction. Okay, and this is the transaction that unlocks that whole region. For the financiers that we've been talking to, they wanted to see that we had that pathway to production, that we didn't have to spend hundreds of $1 million on a new shaft, on a new plant, and so on. So we're able to demonstrate that now with this formal documentation signed. Remember, Mark, this is the formal documentation. This isn't a heads of terms, an MOU. This is the formal asset acquisition agreement. This is all the formal documentation is now done. So for our financiers that we've been talking to for the past several months, it's now very clear for them. They can see this pathway through. So we'll be looking to close that as soon as possible. That funding will allow us to complete on the acquisition payments, because there is both cash payments on this asset acquisition and on Basa North and South. It will also fund our working capital to update the studies. And that's what we're doing at the moment. Our executive team are already updating this study work, updating the capital costs, even though the last study was done I think they updated the costs in May of this year. Okay, so there's not much to update there. And then it's basically using the South African mining industry, the established contractors and support services to come in, refurbish the headgear, to complete the plant and allow us to get back in. Lateral developments from the shaft. The shaft there's 3 shafts as part of the shaft system. We're using the main shaft. We only have to go down between 350 and 450 meters of a shaft system that goes down 2.5 kilometers. That shows the extent of this operation. So we will have mining contractors that will be doing that lateral development off the shaft into the Basa Reef. We'll have contractors that will be mining it, that will then be hauled to surface and processed through the existing gold plant and through the newly constructed uranium plant. 60 kilometers away is Nufcor, which is where in South Africa all the uranium concentrate is processed, is refined. Okay, so you will be able to truck that 60 kilometers to get a refined product here in South Africa, which will then be able to export. So how do we get there? We close our financing. We appoint not just our contractors, but a substantial expansion in terms of our executive management team, Mark. Yeah, this is a major undertaking by us, and it requires management to be expanded and management that have got the capabilities there in South Africa to develop these sort of mines.
Okay. So closing the financing is obviously very important. That's that £11 million cash that you need. The finances, presumably that is AUO.
It's both AUO and others. I can't emphasize that enough. I think AUO is clearly where you obviously spoke to Quinton some time ago. He's putting in place a very significant fund, a fund that's designed to fund infrastructure associated with mining projects. So it ticks all the boxes for us in terms of the refurbishment of the shaft, in terms of the uranium plant and so on. But as I've said before, in our discussions with a number of other financing groups that have got major exposure to uranium and understand South Africa very well, they see us as one of the next, or arguably the next, uranium producers. And, that is a very significant strategic position to have. We've got gold of significant volume that we're producing as a byproduct. So we've got a number of proposals that we've been reviewing, talking about a gold-linked funding. So it's basically a royalty structure, a prepayment structure, a streaming structure, which is obviously non-dilutive to our shareholders, but it uses our byproduct, almost byproduct commodity in gold, which has significant value. Doing 100,000 ounces a year of gold production, gold at what, 2,600, Mark? The sort of annual revenues that you're getting from that is crazy. It's crazy. And to use a small portion of that to basically get that upfront to cover the cost to acquire this asset, Basa North and South, and to fund the working capital costs to get us to that development point. Again, that's something, look, it's my bread and butter. I've been doing those financings when I was an investment banker with Rothschilds and with Investec and so on. So I'm actually loving this side of the business at the moment because we've got a great asset, a bankable asset, which we can basically use to fund the development of this asset into a 20-year plus mining operation.
Okay, yeah. So it'll be sort of self-fulfilling on the cost front once you get towards that production. Just thinking about, you've explained what the next steps are. In terms of what it means for shareholders, in terms of what they can expect, how much is it going to cost them effectively, dilution or money-wise, to get to that point? You've got the 11 million, but also the loan notes as well. So the loan notes are for Sibanye, is that right? And that, if they translate, that will be about 1 billion shares.
Yeah, so basically we've had to do it that way because of the outstanding regulatory approvals that are required. Okay, so as soon as those regulatory approvals are put in place, both in the UK and in South Africa, then those loan notes, which Sibanye will hold, which we're issuing to Sibanye, will then basically be taken out by the issue of equity to them. So Sibanye will be coming on with about 1 billion shares, 995 million shares. They will become the company's largest and strategic shareholder. And with all the acquisitions which we've recently done, they'll be sitting as a call it minimum 30% shareholder in the company. And that's what they're looking at. So between 30 and 40%, they will be sitting there. And obviously the right to potentially increase that as we move forward too, which I think demonstrates their commitment to us and to making our uranium strategy actually come true. They've done their due diligence on us, Mark. They did their due diligence on us, on our strategy, on our management team, but also on our financing plans. And that's probably a very important one for shareholders to know. They reviewed our financing plans. They wouldn't have agreed. They wouldn't have signed all this formal documentation, put out their own releases on this today if they weren't confident in our ability to deliver not just on the financing, but deliver this project into production and other projects into production and become, as we've made very clear, one of South Africa's leading uranium producing companies.
And on the cash side, Jason, that 11 million, I mean, how does that work? When do you need to have that in place by?
Look, the cash settlement of the transaction will take place once all the regulatory approvals in South Africa and in the UK have been received. So that's not expected to take place until after June of 2025.
Good. And just finally, Jason, in terms of what's the immediate next steps are, you've got to get that approval from shareholders. You said Q1 2025 and completion of regulatory processes in the first half of next year. So what are the sort of immediate priorities post the acquisition?
The immediate priorities is the submissions to the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy in South Africa to allow them to approve the various regulatory aspects of this transaction. Both teams have already met with the DMRE up at the office, the regional office up there in the Free State. And the way we've proposed to complete the transaction with them is what they recommended. So we're hoping that is a very smooth a smooth process with them. But that will take us to the second half of next year before that is all completed, because this is a major plan. We have to finalize our Black Economic Empowerment Partner, which is a legislative requirement in South Africa, bring in a local partner, to bring in the communities, to bring in the workforce, to share in the direct equity of this project. So that is something which will be coming through and hopefully be finalized, hopefully before Christmas too. We've moved very quickly on that. That's been working in parallel with this. And we've got to get the notice of meeting, the prospectus out for shareholders to approve it. So that's the big focus from a kind of administrative point of view. From a operations point of view, it's getting ourselves prepared to get in there and take this over. And that requires us, like I said, to expand our management team, but also to complete our reviews and updates of the various studies that we've received. Studies which have been done independently for Sibanye, studies which have been done in-house, very detailed financial modeling. A lot of work to take place. I will get a short break over Christmas, but a lot.
I was going to say there's a lot of work to do. Yeah, for you and the team. Are you ready for any unforeseen? Well, let's hope they're not unforeseen challenges. We know what this world can be like.
Look, I think the great thing about South Africa is you've got such a well-established mining industry. You've got the infrastructure. Where this mine this is part of the Beatrix mining complex. So we've got the Beatrix 4 shaft. There's another 3 operational shafts around there. You've got Harmony, one of the biggest gold producers, and currently South Africa, and I say currently, South Africa's biggest uranium producing company, operating, in and around where we are. So you've got great mine services. So I'm not expecting too many surprises here. I think not surprises to the negative. I think when we get back in there, you'll actually start to see some very positive things come out of this. Because remember, we're a junior company now, and we look at things I guess, a little bit different to some of those major mining houses that have had these assets in the past. So our approach probably a little bit more dynamic, certainly more aggressive and faster. So I'm hoping to see a lot of big surprises, a lot of big wins for us as we get our teeth into this in the first quarter of 2025.
Okay. Well, Jason Brewer, the Executive Chairman of Neo Energy Metals, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks very much.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.